Inspector Spacetime in Wonderland, Chapter 1. The Unlikely Portal. Inspector Spacetime stood at the console of the dodecahedron, his red telephone box-shaped ship that was much larger on the inside than it appeared from the outside. He was dressed in his signature trench coat and bowler hat, his sharp eyes scanning the various screens and instruments in front of him. His young assistant, Tallyn, and the loyal Constable Reggie were busy at their respective stations. "Inspector, there's a strange anomaly ahead," Tallyn reported, his voice filled with excitement and curiosity. Inspector Spacetime adjusted his bowler hat and peered at the scanner. "Interesting. It's not like anything we've encountered before. Reggie, prepare for a closer look." Constable Reggie, ever the diligent officer, nodded and began making adjustments to the ship's controls. "Aye, Inspector, bringing us closer now." As the dodecahedron approached the anomaly, it became clear that it was a portal of some kind. It shimmered with an otherworldly light, casting eerie shadows inside the ship. "What do you think it is, Inspector?" Tallyn asked, his eyes wide with curiosity. Inspector Spacetime tapped his chin thoughtfully. "It appears to be a dimensional rift, Tallyn. We must proceed with caution." The portal seemed to pulse and grow as the dodecahedron drew nearer. With a final glance at his companions, Inspector Spacetime activated the ship's temporal shields and guided them into the heart of the anomaly. The transition was disorienting. The interior of the dodecahedron twisted and stretched, colors blending together in a dizzying display. Then, as suddenly as it began, the turbulence ceased and the ship stabilized. Tallyn looked around, his eyes wide with wonder. "Where are we?" Inspector Spacetime adjusted the main viewer to reveal their surroundings. Outside, they saw a landscape that defied all logic and reason. Trees with multicolored leaves floated above the ground, rivers ran uphill, and the sky was a patchwork of ever-shifting hues. "We're in Wonderland," Inspector Spacetime announced, "a dimension of pure chaos and imagination." As they stepped out of the dodecahedron, they were greeted by the sight of a grinning Cheshire Cat perched on a nearby branch. The cat's wide, toothy smile seemed to hover in mid-air, even as the rest of its body faded in and out of view. "Welcome, Inspector," the Cheshire Cat purred. "We've been expecting you." Inspector Spacetime raised an eyebrow. "You know who I am?" The Cheshire Cat's grin widened. "Oh, we know many things here in Wonderland. But right now, what you need to know is that this place is in turmoil." Tallyn stepped forward, his youthful curiosity getting the better of him. "What kind of turmoil?" The Cheshire Cat's eyes glinted mischievously. "The Red Queen has taken control and imprisoned the true ruler, the White Queen. Chaos reigns, and not the delightful kind we usually enjoy." Inspector Spacetime nodded thoughtfully. "Then it seems we have a mystery to solve. Where can we find this White Queen?" The Cheshire Cat's body slowly materialized, lounging lazily on the branch. "You might want to start with the White Rabbit. He's always in a hurry, but he knows more than he lets on." With that cryptic advice, the Cheshire Cat vanished, leaving only his grin behind for a moment before it too disappeared. "Right," Inspector Spacetime said, turning to his companions. "Let's find the White Rabbit and get to the bottom of this." As they ventured deeper into Wonderland, the trio encountered a series of bizarre and challenging obstacles. The landscape seemed to shift and change with each step they took, making navigation difficult. Strange creatures and perplexing puzzles blocked their path, but with Inspector Spacetime's quick thinking, Tallyn's resourcefulness, and Reggie's bravery, they pressed on. After what felt like hours of wandering through the ever-changing terrain, they finally spotted the White Rabbit. He was darting frantically between trees, muttering to himself, and constantly checking a large pocket watch. "Excuse me," Inspector Spacetime called out, quickening his pace to catch up to the agitated rabbit. The White Rabbit turned, his eyes wide with worry. No time at all. I'm terribly late." "Late for what?" Tallyn asked, trying to keep up. "For a very important date," the White Rabbit replied, not slowing down. "But if you must know, the Red Queen has thrown everything into chaos. The White Queen needs your help." Inspector Spacetime managed to step in front of the White Rabbit, halting his frantic movements. "We want to help. Can you tell us where to find the White Queen?" The White Rabbit hesitated, glancing at his watch. Very well, but you must hurry. Follow the path through the Tulgey Wood, and you will find her imprisoned in the Red Queen's castle. But be warned, the Jabberwocky guards the way. With that, the White Rabbit darted off, leaving the trio with a sense of urgency. They exchanged determined looks and set off towards the Tulgey Wood, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead in their quest to restore balance to Wonderland. Chapter 2. The White Rabbit's Secret Inspector. Spacetime, Tallyn, and Constable Reggie ventured deeper into the heart of Wonderland, following the White Rabbit's cryptic instructions. The Tulgey Wood was a labyrinthine forest, its twisted trees and shifting paths making navigation a daunting task. Strange creatures flitted in and out of sight, their eyes gleaming in the dim light that filtered through the dense canopy above. Stay close, Inspector Spacetime instructed, his voice calm but firm. This place has a way of playing tricks on the mind. Tallyn and Reggie nodded, keeping their senses sharp as they moved forward. The forest seemed alive, whispering and rustling with unseen presences. Every so often, they caught glimpses of figures darting between the trees, but when they turned to look, there was nothing there. After what felt like an eternity, they stumbled upon a clearing. In the center stood a large, gnarled tree with a hollow at its base. From within the hollow, a soft, flickering light beckoned them closer. "Looks like we've found something," Reggie remarked, his hand resting on the hilt of his baton. As they approached the tree, a familiar voice echoed from within. "Ah, the inspector and his companions. Right on time." Emerging from the hollow was the Cheshire Cat, his grin as wide as ever. "You've done well to make it this far. The White Queen's prison is not much farther, but the path is fraught with danger." "We're prepared for whatever lies ahead," Inspector Spacetime replied. "Tell us what we need to know." The Cheshire Cat's eyes gleamed. "The Red Queen's castle is guarded by the fearsome Jabberwocky. It is a creature of pure chaos, born from the very fabric of Wonderland itself. To defeat it, you must use your wits and the tools at your disposal." "Any specific weaknesses we should be aware of?" Tallyn asked, his curiosity piqued. The Cheshire Cat chuckled. "The Jabberwocky is a creature of imagination, susceptible to the power of belief. You must believe in your victory, and it will come to pass." With those enigmatic words, the Cheshire Cat vanished once more, leaving the trio to contemplate their next move. "We need to find a way to get into the castle without alerting the Jabberwocky," Reggie said, his mind already racing with ideas. Inspector Spacetime nodded. "Agreed. Let's keep moving. We can't afford to waste any time." They continued through the Tulgey Wood, the path growing narrower and more treacherous with each step. The air grew colder, and an eerie silence settled over the forest. Finally, they emerged from the trees to find themselves standing before the towering walls of the Red Queen's castle. Guards patrolled the perimeter, their stern expressions a testament to the danger that lay within. The castle itself was a foreboding structure, its dark spires reaching into the sky like twisted fingers. "We need a distraction," Tallyn whispered, eyeing the guards. "Something to draw them away from the main gate." Inspector Spacetime glanced around, his sharp mind quickly formulating a plan. "Reggie, can you create a diversion on the far side of the castle? Tallyn and I will use the opportunity to slip inside." Reggie nodded, a determined look on his face. "Consider it done, Inspector. Good luck." As Reggie moved off to execute his part of the plan, Inspector Spacetime and Tallyn waited for the right moment. Soon, a series of loud bangs and flashes of light erupted from the far side of the castle, drawing the guards' attention away from the gate. "Now," Inspector Spacetime urged, and the two of them darted forward, slipping through the gate and into the shadows of the courtyard. Inside the castle, they moved quickly but cautiously, avoiding patrols and sticking to the shadows. The interior was a maze of corridors and staircases, each one leading deeper into the heart of the fortress. Finally, they reached a large, ornate door, guarded by two imposing figures. The door was marked with the emblem of the Red Queen, and it was clear that whatever lay beyond was of great importance. "That must be where they're keeping the White Queen," Tallyn whispered. Inspector Spacetime nodded. "We need to find a way past those guards without raising the alarm." Just as they were formulating a plan, a soft voice spoke from the shadows. "Looking for something?" They turned to see a card soldier, his expression weary but determined. "I'm here to help. The White Queen is imprisoned in the tower. Follow me." The card soldier led them through a series of secret passages, bypassing the guards and taking them closer to their goal. "Many of us are loyal to the White Queen," he explained. "We want to see her restored to power." As they ascended the final staircase, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed behind them. The Jabberwocky was approaching, its presence a palpable force of chaos and fear. "We must hurry," the card soldier urged. "The Jabberwocky will not be easily defeated." Reaching the top of the tower, they found the White Queen imprisoned in a shimmering cage of light. She looked up as they entered, her eyes filled with hope and determination. "Inspector Spacetime," she said, her voice regal and calm. "You've come at last." "We're here to free you, Your Majesty," Inspector Spacetime replied. "But we need to deal with the Jabberwocky first." The White Queen nodded. "Believe in your victory, and it will come to pass. The power of Wonderland lies in the strength of your imagination." With those words echoing in their minds, they prepared for the final confrontation with the Jabberwocky, knowing that their belief in victory was their greatest weapon. Chapter 3. The Mad Tea Party. With the White Queen's words of encouragement, Inspector Spacetime, Tallyn, and their newfound ally, the card soldier, descended the tower with haste. They knew the Jabberwocky would soon be upon them, and they needed a plan. As they reached the courtyard, they were greeted by a strange sight. A long table set up under a large tree, covered with a chaotic array of teapots, cups, and pastries. At the head of the table sat the Mad Hatter, his wild eyes and eccentric outfit unmistakable. Beside him was the March Hare, equally mad, and the Dormouse, dozing peacefully in a teacup. "Welcome, welcome," the Mad Hatter exclaimed, tipping his oversized hat. "More guests for tea! How splendid!" Inspector Spacetime approached the table cautiously. "Mad Hatter, we seek information. The Jabberwocky is coming, and we need to know how to defeat it." The Mad Hatter's eyes twinkled with madness and curiosity. "The Jabberwocky, you say? Nasty creature, that one. But first, you must join us for tea. It's the only way to discuss such matters properly." Reluctantly, the trio took their seats. The tea party was a whirlwind of nonsensical conversation and impossible antics, but amid the chaos, they managed to learn a few important things. The Mad Hatter revealed that the Jabberwocky was drawn to the Red Queen's power, and that defeating it required more than just physical strength. "The Vorpal Sword," the March Hare whispered, leaning in conspiratorially. "It's the only thing that can slay the beast. Hidden in the depths of the Tulgey Wood, it is." "Beware," added the Dormouse, waking briefly from his slumber. "The path is treacherous, and the sword is guarded by fearsome creatures." Inspector Spacetime nodded, taking in the information. "Thank you, Mad Hatter. We shall find this Vorpal sword and defeat the Jabberwocky." As they left the tea party and headed back into the Tulgey Wood, the landscape seemed even more twisted and foreboding than before. The trees loomed larger, and the path grew darker, but their resolve was unwavering. The card soldier led the way, his knowledge of the forest proving invaluable. They encountered bizarre creatures and perplexing puzzles, each one testing their courage and ingenuity. Tallyn's quick thinking and Reggie's bravery were essential as they navigated the treacherous terrain. Finally, they arrived at a clearing where an ancient tree stood. Its gnarled branches twisted like the claws of a monster, and at its base, embedded in a stone, was the Vorpal sword. The sword gleamed with a light of its own, as if waiting for a worthy hand to wield it. Inspector Spacetime approached the sword with caution. "This must be it, the Vorpal sword." Tallyn looked at the sword in awe. "It's beautiful, but how do we get it out?" Constable Reggie stepped forward. "Allow me." With a firm grip, he grasped the hilt of the sword and pulled. At first, it didn't budge, but then, with a sudden lurch, it came free from the stone. The moment the Vorpal sword was released, a loud roar echoed through the forest. The Jabberwocky was near. "We need to prepare," Inspector Spacetime said, his voice calm but urgent. "Tallyn, stay close to me. Reggie, keep the sword ready. The Jabberwocky is coming." The ground trembled as the fearsome creature approached. Through the trees, they could see its massive form, eyes glowing with malice. It was a nightmarish beast, its jaws dripping with venom. Talon's heart pounded in his chest, but he stood his ground, ready to face whatever came next. Inspector Spacetime placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We'll get through this, Tallyn. Together." As the Jabberwocky emerged into the clearing, its terrifying presence filled the air with dread. But the trio stood firm, ready to face the beast and continue their journey through Wonderland. Reggie brandished the vorpal sword, its blade shimmering with a mystical light. The Jabberwocky roared and charged, its claws outstretched. With a swift and precise strike, Reggie slashed at the beast, but the Jabberwocky was quick, dodging the blow and countering with a swipe of its own. The battle was intense, each moment filled with danger and uncertainty. Inspector Spacetime and Tallyn used their surroundings to their advantage, distracting the Jabberwocky and creating openings for Reggie to attack. The creature's hide was tough, and it took all their combined efforts to wear it down. Finally, with a mighty swing, Reggie struck a decisive blow. The vorpal sword pierced the Jabberwocky's heart, and the beast let out a final earth-shaking roar before collapsing to the ground, defeated. The trio stood over the fallen creature, breathing heavily but victorious. The vorpal sword had proven its worth, and with the Jabberwocky defeated, their path to the Red Queen's castle was clear. "Well done, Reggie," Inspector Spacetime said, clapping his hand on the constable's shoulder. "And excellent work, Tallyn. Your quick thinking made all the difference." Tallyn beamed with pride, grateful for the inspector's praise. "What's next, Inspector?" "We head to the Red Queen's castle," Inspector Spacetime replied. "With the Jabberwocky defeated, our path should be clear." As they made their way towards the castle, the atmosphere of Wonderland seemed to lighten. The oppressive darkness that had loomed over the forest began to lift, and the colors grew brighter. They knew their journey was far from over, but with each step, they grew more determined to restore balance to Wonderland and free the White Queen. Chapter 4. The Queen's Gambit. With the Jabberwocky defeated, Inspector Spacetime, Tallyn, and Constable Reggie pressed on towards the Red Queen's castle. The oppressive atmosphere of Wonderland began to lift, but they knew their greatest challenge still lay ahead. The Red Queen's castle loomed ominously on the horizon, its tall spires piercing the sky. As they approached, the air grew colder, and the colors faded into somber hues. The castle's guards, fierce and loyal playing cards, patrolled the perimeter. "We need a plan to get inside without alerting the entire castle," Reggie said, scanning the defenses. Inspector Spacetime nodded. "Agreed. We should look for a less guarded entrance." They circled the castle, keeping to the shadows. Eventually, they found a small, unguarded door partially hidden by ivy. Tallyn picked the lock with ease, and they slipped inside. The interior of the castle was a maze of dark corridors and grand halls. They moved cautiously, aware of the many traps and guards. Eventually, they reached a grand hall where they encountered a group of card soldiers. "Hold your ground. They are with me," a familiar voice called out. Their ally, the disillusioned card soldier, emerged from the shadows. He gestured for the guards to lower their weapons and led the trio through a hidden passageway. "We don't have much time," the card soldier whispered urgently. "The Red Queen's power is at its peak. If we don't act swiftly, she will solidify her rule forever." The card soldier led them to a concealed chamber where a small group of rebels, loyal to the White Queen, were gathered. They looked weary, but determined, ready to do whatever it took to restore their true queen to the throne. The card soldier outlined their plan. "The Red Queen's power comes from her scepter. If we can destroy it, her hold over Wonderland will be broken." "But how do we get to her?" Tallyn asked. "She's bound to be heavily guarded." "We'll create a diversion," the card soldier replied. "While the guards are distracted, you three can slip into the throne room and confront her." Inspector Spacetime nodded. "It's a sound plan. We'll need to move quickly and decisively." As the rebels prepared their distraction, the trio made their way to the throne room. They encountered various traps and puzzles set up to deter intruders, but with their combined skills, they navigated these obstacles with relative ease. Finally, they reached the throne room. The Red Queen sat on her ornate throne, her scepter glowing with a menacing light. She rose as they entered, her eyes burning with fury. "So, you've come to challenge me," she sneered. "Fools, you think you can defeat me?" Inspector Spacetime stepped forward, his voice calm but resolute. "Your reign of terror ends now, Red Queen. We will restore balance to Wonderland." The Red Queen laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "We shall see about that." With a flick of her wrist, the Red Queen unleashed a wave of dark energy. Inspector Spacetime and his companions dodged the attack, but the force of it shattered the ground around them. Reggie brandished the vorpal sword, its blade glowing with an inner light, and charged at the Queen. The battle was fierce and intense. The Red Queen wielded her scepter with deadly precision, and her dark magic filled the room with chaotic energy. But Inspector Spacetime, Tallyn, and Reggie fought with unwavering determination. Tallyn used his quick thinking to disrupt the Queen's spells, throwing objects and creating distractions. Reggie's swordsmanship kept the Queen on the defensive, while Inspector Spacetime analyzed her movements, looking for an opening. Finally, Reggie landed a decisive blow, knocking the scepter from the Red Queen's hand. It clattered to the ground, its dark glow flickering and fading. The Red Queen let out a cry of rage and despair as Inspector Spacetime seized the scepter and shattered it with the vorpal sword. The moment the scepter broke, the oppressive aura lifted. The castle walls seemed to brighten, and the air grew warmer. The Red Queen fell to her knees, her power broken, and the rebels burst into the throne room, cheering. The White Queen, freed from her magical prison, entered the throne room with a regal grace. "Thank you, Inspector Spacetime. You have restored peace to Wonderland." Inspector Spacetime bowed. "It was our honor, Your Majesty, but we must now find a way to secure Wonderland's peace and stability." The White Queen nodded. "Of course. We must gather our allies and solidify the new order. There will be challenges ahead, but with your help, we can rebuild." As they began the process of restoring order to Wonderland, the trio knew their work was not yet done. They had defeated the Red Queen, but the task of ensuring lasting peace and stability was just beginning. Chapter 5. The Final Battle. With the Red Queen's defeat, the White Queen's forces began to take control of key locations throughout Wonderland. However, remnants of the Red Queen's magic and loyalists still posed a threat. Inspector Spacetime, Tallyn, and Constable Reggie remained in Wonderland to help solidify the White Queen's rule and ensure lasting peace. As the days passed, the White Queen's castle became a hub of activity. The residents of Wonderland, relieved and hopeful, rallied to rebuild their land. Yet, the looming threat of residual chaotic magic and the Red Queen's hidden loyalists demanded immediate attention. Inspector Spacetime stood with the White Queen and her advisors, discussing their next steps. "Our first priority should be securing key locations across Wonderland," the White Queen declared. "If we can control these areas, we can cut off the Red Queen's forces and prevent them from regrouping." Reggie nodded. "I'll lead a group to secure the Eastern Territories. The vorpal sword should give us an edge in battle." Tallyn, ever the inquisitive mind, raised a concern. "What about the chaotic magic? Even with the Red Queen gone, it's still affecting the land." Inspector Spacetime considered this. "We'll need to find the source of the residual magic and neutralize it. Tallyn, I need you to work with the White Queen's mages to track it down." The White Queen summoned her most trusted advisors and strategists. Together, they devised a plan to reclaim Wonderland. The forces would be divided into 3 groups. One to secure the Eastern Territories, one to protect the castle and its surroundings, and one to seek out and neutralize the chaotic magic. As the forces set out, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Reggie led the Eastern contingent, moving swiftly to confront the remnants of the Red Queen's army. The battles were fierce, but the sight of the vorpal sword inspired courage and hope among the White Queen soldiers. Meanwhile, Inspector Spacetime and the White Queen coordinated their efforts, responding to emerging threats. The chaos magic proved difficult to track, shifting and changing like a living entity. Tallyn, alongside the White Queen's mages, delved into ancient texts and magical artifacts, searching for clues to dispel the lingering darkness. Days turned into weeks as the battles raged on. Slowly but surely, the forces of the White Queen gained ground. The eastern territories were secured, and the Red Queen's loyalists were pushed back. The castle stood as a beacon of hope, its defenses holding strong against any assault. Finally, a breakthrough came. Tallyn discovered that the chaotic magic was being anchored by a series of enchanted mirrors hidden across Wonderland. Each mirror acted as a conduit, amplifying the residual energy from the Red Queen's reign. If they could find and destroy these mirrors, the chaos would dissipate. Inspector Spacetime, Tallyn, and a select group of mages set out to locate the mirrors. The journey was perilous, each mirror guarded by powerful enchantments and fierce creatures. But with determination and teamwork, they overcame each challenge, shattering the mirrors one by one. With the final mirror destroyed, a palpable change swept through Wonderland. The colors brightened, the air grew warmer, and a sense of peace settled over the land. The chaotic magic was no more. Returning to the castle, the trio was met with cheers and celebrations. The White Queen addressed her people, her voice filled with gratitude and hope. Today, we celebrate the end of a dark chapter and the beginning of a new era. Thanks to the bravery and wisdom of our friends, Wonderland is free once more. Inspector Spacetime, Tallyn, and Reggie stood together, reflecting on their journey. They had faced incredible challenges and emerged victorious, their bond stronger than ever. As the celebrations continued, the trio knew that their time in Wonderland was coming to an end. They had restored balance and peace, but their adventures were far from over. "Thank you for everything," the White Queen said, approaching them. "You will always have a place in Wonderland." Inspector Spacetime smiled. "It has been an honor, Your Majesty. But it's time for us to continue our journey." With a final farewell, they returned to the dodecahedron, ready to embark on their next adventure. As they settled into their familiar positions, a sense of accomplishment and anticipation filled the air. Inspector Spacetime adjusted the controls, setting their course for new dimensions and unknown mysteries. Another successful mission, team, but our journey is far from over. Tallyn looked out at the vast expanse of the multiverse, his eyes filled with wonder. "I wonder what adventures await us next." Reggie smiled, his grip firm on the Vorpal sword, now safely sheathed. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." With a final glance back at Wonderland, the dodecahedron vanished into the fabric of time and space, leaving behind a land restored to peace and harmony. Their adventure in Wonderland was just one chapter in their ongoing journey, and they were ready for whatever came next. The end.